I never thought of my neighbor as anything other than just a regular guy. His name was Mr. Walker, and he had lived next door for as long as I could remember. He was the kind of man who kept to himself, never caused trouble, never raised his voice. But there was one thing about him that always stood out. His basement. He never let anyone near it. And I mean never. I first noticed it when I was a kid. I'd play in my backyard, and every now and then, I'd see Mr. Walker carrying things down into his basement. Boxes, bags, sometimes even furniture, but he never brought anything back out. I was curious, of course, but every time I asked about it, he'd just smile and say, "Some things are better left alone, kid." I never pushed, until one night, I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. It was late, past midnight. I had just gotten home when I noticed a faint glow coming from Mr. Walker's basement window. The curtains were drawn, but I could see shadows moving inside. And then I heard it, a low, muffled scream. My stomach tightened. My brain told me to walk away, to forget I had heard anything. But my legs had a different idea. I stepped closer. That's when I saw it. Mr. Walker dragging something heavy across the floor. It looked like a body. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding. Should I call the police? Should I run? I didn't know what to do, but my curiosity was stronger than my fear. So I waited. At around 3 a.m., Mr. Walker finally left his house. I watched as he got into his car and drove away. This was my chance. I crept across the yard, heart hammering in my chest. The basement door was locked, of course, but the window was open, just a crack. With shaking hands, I pushed it open and slipped inside. The air was thick with dust and something else, something rotten. I covered my nose, trying not to gag. The room was cluttered with old furniture, broken appliances, and a massive wooden chest right in the middle of the floor. The same chest I had seen Mr. Walker dragging earlier. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside, bones, human bones. My breath caught in my throat. Some were old, yellowed with age, but others looked fresh. My mind raced. Who were they? Where did they come from? And then I noticed something even worse. A photo album sitting beside the chest. With shaking hands, I flipped it open. Inside were pictures, dozens of them. Some were faded and black and white, others were newer. But they all had one thing in common. Each photo showed a person, and each one had an X drawn over their face. My blood turned to ice. That's when I heard the floor creak above me. Mr. Walker was back. I panicked. My eyes darted around the room, searching for a place to hide. But there was nowhere. Footsteps, coming down the stairs. I did the only thing I could think of. I slid inside the chest and pulled the lid down just enough to leave a crack for air. My body pressed against the bones, my breath shallow. The basement door swung open. I could hear him moving around, muttering to himself. Then he stopped, right next to the chest. The lid shifted slightly. I bit my lip to keep from screaming, and then silence. For what felt like an eternity, I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And then finally, he turned and walked away. The basement door shut. I waited until I was sure he was gone. Then, as quietly as I could, I lifted the lid and crawled out. I didn't bother with the window. I ran straight for the basement door, unlocked it, and bolted out into the night. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. The next morning, I called the police. When they arrived, they found the chest, the bones, the photos, and something even worse, a list. My name was on it. Mr. Walker was arrested that same day. Turns out, he had been doing this for decades. The bones belonged to people who had gone missing over the years, people nobody had ever found. If I hadn't gone into that basement, I might have been next.